Welcome to Wonder Without the Fear. Today I have Randy Kaiser, who went from being a rancher to into the banking system, or the failed system, I suppose, into what we're now calling the new credit system. So welcome. How's it going today?
Wonderful, brother. I'm gonna scan around. I like to do this because I live in such a beautiful city. So I'm up here in Northwest Calgary, and you may not be able to see the far end of this, but there's the Rocky Mountains. As you can see, I'm in this great big beautiful park that should be full of children playing soccer and baseball. And even the playground here, they've got yellow caution flags surrounding it. You can't go near it, even though we know that sun is a very good disinfectant on plastic and metal. But the insanity we've been living in. However, I find it good because everyone had to get kind of locked down, or we would have ended up being in a civil disobedience or cognitive dissonance kind of a situation with all of the things that are happening behind the scenes. So there we go. You started off, Chris, and thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you. This is actually our second time. The first time failed, so really appreciate you taking this second time going through it. So basically, let's start with your story. You started out as a rancher, and then you start looking into the banking system. What sort of happened there? What's transpired?
Yeah, well, I'll tidy it up pretty quick, Chris. I was in cattle business since I was 20 years old. My father died when I was really young, so I dove right into it. And after a number of years of raising purebred stock, I decided to get involved in marketing of natural beef. And I just like to call it natural because organic turns into regulations, and regulations turn into bullshitters and everything else. So we just stuck with the natural and truth, like tell the truth to the consumer. And boy, did we have a lot of fun. We started that about 20 years ago. And then 3 or 4 years later, we got involved direct with a retail in Calgary. So we had our own store and expanded that to a couple of stores. And then we went to town and we decided we were going to build or buy our own plant after that BSE schmozzle that maybe people remember, the mad cow disease thing, which was another false flag event to line the pockets of the multinationals. But, not very many people want to talk about that. So anyway, in that proposal of purchasing our own harvest facility, I really dove in hard and did a lot of traveling to build contacts and contracts and MOUs signed and MOAs and all kinds of stuff. And we proposed it to the banks, and banks just kept saying no. And it was tough to take until we finally failed completely, and it cost the farm, which that was no regrets, okay? Because I was doing well, but I was still in the capitalist mode, right? And conscientious as it was still capitalism, and I still thought in terms of me first. So losing everything like that was a really good thing for my being, for my path, for my journey, if you want to call it that. So a few years ago, I was exploring the idea of why the banks were able to take properties away from people. And we went into some court sessions with some friends that were teaching me about trusts and trust law and whatnot. And the fact that, this paper and manifestation of paper was the only thing that happens when money is manifested. So I took a run at the people that eventually took over my place. And I said to them, I want my wet ink signed contract back or contracts, because there was a number of loans and mortgages supposedly that I had. And when I did that, they couldn't supply that. Of course they couldn't. And I knew that, because that paper is what manifests the credit, okay? And the credit then comes back to the liability, me, who signs off and promises to pay it back, and that's how the manifestation process of money occurs. And that is at every level. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell, and then I'd like to hear you, and I'll answer some more questions as we go along. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for giving that brief overview. That's good introduction. So can we get into a little bit more meat and bones of what your understanding of credit, the old system, which is that credit debt system, a little bit of how that works into what you're seeing transmit into like the more spiritual side of things, those three different levels of law, banking law, and how it's now transmitted into that credit manifestation process.
Sure. So, yeah, like threes are kind of cool numbers for the development and evolutionary process of all things natural. So, I like to deal with numbers a lot, obviously, because now I got into the bank and I always played with them myself. But if you think about it, we live in three jurisdictions. So there's the first being the legal illusory jurisdiction, right? The one where there's all these legal statutes, and I don't like to call them laws, but they're bylaws, whatever you want to call it, that we live by, right? We have to have a driver's license. We have to have this. We have to have that. And all of that stuff, without me spending a lot of time on it, Chris, and there's a lot of better people to explain it, is the idea that we give up our creditor status and become dead entities or debt entities. And that process is the process that's failing and has been failing for a number of years, and is in my mind, the major reason for this reset that's happening right now. So first jurisdiction being that legal illusory jurisdiction where, our birth certificate makes us into a corporation, corpse, a dead entity. And we give up our power and our credit capabilities to the government, okay? And that one is, like I say, falling apart. So second jurisdiction that we learn, and in fact, a lot of times we'll jump from that into the spiritual jurisdiction, which is where I feel, people like yourself are at. You understand who you are as a being, as a man in this universe, and how your power is within, and you are, responsible for the Christed light, or responsible to be following Satan, which only means crazy thoughts in Aramaic. So we either follow the crazy thoughts or we follow the Christed light, which is beautiful. And that is, complete understanding who I am and who you are on a spiritual level. But the one in the middle there that often gets overlooked is the common law jurisdiction. Uniform Commercial Code is another definition of it, or common sense. Okay, so do no harm and live a life of, of your power, but do no harm. And, take your credit and do good things with it and live a wonderful life. So that is the area that I started to develop and realize that was me when I got involved in banking, because the fellow that taught me is a Bauer Rothschild, okay? Taught me the banking industry. Rothschild being a word, like Red Shield is one definition of it, or Royal Children is another definition of it, but Bauer being the family, just like Mayer being the family, or Windsor being the family, or whatever, that's so. Bauer introduced me to the Common Law Pure Trust, and I really found a home there. And I've established one of those where I own nothing, and everything that I have is in a trust. And it's at a level that the legal doesn't really recognize it at this point, or at the point we were at. But at this point, it's starting to come back into reality again. And I can see, you know, North America leading the way in the common law jurisdiction once again. So that's a little brief uh, introduction into those three jurisdictions, I guess.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about like what is what so when they use the notes that we have, you know, the cash flow, what is so how is a bond, a brief abbreviation, how is a bond created, how are they using it, and how is that you use a very simple way of like we just have to flip that on side so that we're taking like we recognize that and we take that power back. How's that done?
Well, okay, you know, I'm going to mix the two upper jurisdictions here for just a moment and say
Yeah.
spiritually knowing, okay, which is what we have the capability to do, knowing that we are whatever we want to be, okay? We can get whatever we want on this earth. There's some beautiful, you know, works out there. One of my favorite authors is Wallace Wattles, and the science of being rich and the science of being great, and beautiful language from the early 1900s, but there are numerous authors that speak this way. So first we have to put ourselves in that position, like me talking about being the governor of the Central Bank of Canada, or you know, the Gaidener, I like to call it, or something like that. Put yourself out there. Just set a goal, you know, and then we come back into the common law jurisdiction and say, how is that bond created, or how was that bond created by the previous um, administrations around the world, these governments, right? And that is based on our signature and our consent, unknowingly, of course, with the birth certificate. And then as we grow older and get into the work environment, we willingly consent to get a SIN number. You know, Canada is just perfect. Like they call it social insurance number, which is SIN. In the States, it's what is it, social security number. So it's not quite as obvious, you know. So our SIN number really gets us into the system. And every single signed document then that is, you know, at a public level becomes an instrument in the government's hands. And I was thinking about it today, Chris, and it was good timing because I'm gonna explain the old monetary system in a gambling casino manner, okay? Because that's basically what it is. But before I do that, I'll just stop because I can rattle on one topic for you can see that until I freaking fall down. But you go ahead first, and then I'll dive back into that explanation.
Yeah, so just I'm just getting I think I'm going to explain my understanding of a little bit of a background from those Shin laws, and one of those things that that I'm able to see through from what I've studied is basically that you're looking at maritime admiralty law, which is the law of the sea, and if we have that then we can understand how these system works. So the basics of it, it's really humorous in my view, looking at it. But I mean, they take these terms seriously, even though it's humorous at the same time at another level. And that is, it's all about that manifest when a ship is always a female, comes into a dock, births, and then there's always they have to give the manifest to the dock, and that creates a birth certificate. And if there happens to be a broken item, then that's, you know, a death certificate. And then they're able to like, okay, well, this is worth so much. This Toyota is worth so much money. This TV is worth so much money. So then they're able to like, okay, this is what's worth. And this two TVs over here broke. So here's a couple death certificates. And this is how that they've used this. And they've basically done it, us being none the wiser have done this. So I'll let you continue on with what you were talking about there, but just a little overview.
Sure, that was really good, Chris. And it is, you know, it's about manifests and paper and signatures. I call it the mark of the beast. This is where I feel the mark of the beast comes in. But we can put that term to all kinds of things, the vaccination or whatever, people talk of it in different ways. But we're here to create our own realities personally from within and expunge on that, and share that. And then each angel that comes into our life is a reflection of us. So you're an angel, you're a reflection of me. I'm an angel, I'm a reflection of you in your universe, in your reality. And what do we do with that? We just take the good out of it. Because if we start judging the situation, we'll always, keep spinning around, right? So if I judge the Rothschilds, for instance, if I judge the government officials and stuff, well, what good is that going to do me? And the humor part that you mentioned, which I got to note, is the beauty of it, because they've been laughing at us for so long. It's our turn. So we've figured this out, and we're going to start laughing at them, whoever them is. And again, most of the people are just people that have fallen into the spell and don't know what's going on anyway. So that, the bankers that I deal with and stuff, they don't really know. And we've all got self uh, self-indulgence ahead of service to others. So we had, and we're slowly getting out of that. And it's what's leading the charge now, is those of us that think of others first, and we know that eventually that's going to pay off. It's a Christ story, whatever you want to call it, but it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you or what have you been working on in the background? Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing without giving away information that you're not supposed to, obviously?
I give everything away. There's nothing that I hold back, and I've been threatened by DOD and DOJ and CIA and Asian elders. We're gonna kill you. We're gonna do this. Oh, whatever. That's not in my reality. So yeah, everything is shareable, and anybody that wants to hear my story, I mean, and again, you can believe me or not. I mean, this is what I do. So let's get into that story of the credits in the gambling casino for a minute, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you get these chips in the casino, right? When you go in, and to you, they're considered debt, right? So if you gain more chips, then when you cash out at the end of the day, you have more, right? So it's that simple. So and that's the way it should be in this system. But they reverse it and they make that into debt, right? So uh, through that process we were talking about, the manifest and the debt certificate, right? I call it the debt certificate. So it makes us into debtors, which is, in reality, we aren't debtors. Like, who the hell are we in debt to in this system that's not backed by anything but agreements, right? So signed documents. And as high up into the banking realms as you go, Chris, it's the same. Like, whether I go into the bank and get a mortgage on a house, or a loan in their language on a car, loan in etymology actually means gift from God. And we have the right to use this gift from God, anything on Mother Earth, to build our homes and to function as human beings. And we don't have to pay it back with anything but our energy and our consciousness to be stewards of the property, stewards of the land, whatever. But we made this system up that's just bonkers. It's like we become debtors. But who are we in debt to? Nobody, other than the people and the families. I'm going to call it, because it's a group of banking families that started this, and that still participated up until very recently in the manifestation process. So they create the paper, we sign it, or in the bigger levels, two bankers sign a paper, right? So if you want to get credit to build, say, the Bow Center in Calgary, $1.4 billion project, well, then you'll need what they call, in my language, an MT-103, so a medium-term 103 message. It's in the SWIFT system, okay? The SWIFT is being Society of Worldwide interbranch finance telecommunications, but we're changing that to funding instead of finance because there's no finance, there's no money lent, or there's no asset to back it, but the actual manifest. So these two bankers create a standalone instrument that goes into the receiving bank, where the liability, the contractor comes in, signs off as the promise to pay it back, and poof, credit is created, right? And so it's not money out of thin air, as people say. That's not the truth. There is a contract in place, and that contract is what's vaulted in the receiving bank to allow this process to take place. So it's a pretty cool system, like honestly, it's perfect. Other than it got manipulated and exploited. And maybe it was right from the beginning, I guess, but 1944 was when they introduced the Federal Reserve System. And this is what I'm talking about: Federal Reserve, Bank of International Settlements, World Bank, IMF. It's all private owned banking families that supposedly own that, but they don't really own it because it's all credit. And it's our credit that started it. I know that sounds a little mixed up sometimes, and when I speak it to some people that just don't grasp it at all, I sound like I'm a freaking idiot. But hopefully, we've got people that are gonna take another lesson and start to grasp it, because it is quite simple. And that's why I'm here, because I don't have the education of an economist to bring in a bunch of legalese or flowery language or anything. I'm just here to explain it in as simple a terms as possible, Chris. And like I say, in reality, it is simple. We are the creditors, not the debtors. So, they're using these bankers to credit all of this finance, but it's just people, it's just human energy, it's just signatures that starts it. So all we got to do is correct that one thing. We are the creditors, we are the creators rather than the manifestors, and then we can create unlimited amounts of money. There's unlimited amounts of manifested credit already, unlimited. Like, you'd just boggle your mind if you saw the zeros behind the accounts that I see going across my desk. It's just phenomenal. But it's just credit until a liability comes on, or until the families decide, well, let's just fund that one, like Esso or Walmart or one of their globalist companies. Those ones just shuffle around. They never ever pay back the loan. If they pay some interest or some fees, that's it. But they never pay back the loan because they just get another one going. It's
Round and around it goes.
of course.
Yeah, that's really cool. I what before I signed in, I watched your little video talking about this money, that the $2,000 the government's giving out. Can you just give obviously people can go back and watch your video, but just for the purpose of this, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd like to, and then we'll probably tie it up, Chris. I think a half hour is probably
Sure.
long enough for folks. I mean, I'm here for anybody. If anybody wants to come on my Facebook and contact me privately, I'm welcome to that. Like right at this point in time, things are moving, but we're going to really start to move quickly in the next week or two. So at this time, I'm welcome to any kind of, communication with people. But yeah, basically the way I'd put it is that $2,000 is yours. You're the creditor of it. Pay no attention to any other language that they use, that, oh, we'll have to pay this back, we're putting debt on our children. That's just garbage talk. Like, that's just to suck us into believing in something. So take that. It's your money. And however old you are, however young you are, don't say you don't qualify. Just phone the number. Like, it's like a 3-minute call. You give them your social insurance number, you say yes or no. And if you have to fib a little bit when you say yes or no, just fib a little bit, because they've been fibbing all along. so if they say, did you make 5,000 or more in the last year and you didn't? Just say yes. You know what I mean? Like it's there for us now, and this is the switch. I call it the basic income, and we can put that number in, link it to the video. I've got the phone number for Canadians to call in. If you're interested in doing that, Chris, we can put that up on the end of the video or something.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that for you. Is there what's your YouTube account? What's that called? How can people look you up on YouTube? What's the easiest way, you think?
I think it's either under Randall Kaiser or Randy Kaiser. I have two, but I don't know. I'm not a techie guy, so just check either one. And
I'll link it for you.
Sure. And then if you use the keywords bull boy banker, because I never was really a cowboy, I never rode horses, but I raised lots of bulls and got thrown around by them, so I chose the name bull boy banker. So if you Google that on YouTube, you'll find me, because I got tons of videos, and then you can go from there. But I'd just like to shout out to a couple of groups that I'm involved with too, Chris, at the end here, and one being
Sure.
And a name of a man, Sasha Stone, and I have been working together for many years. And it started with Humanitad and his New Earth Nation projects and stuff. And then I got involved with ITNJ as well. And I spent a day flying over to London when we inaugurated the ITNJ, and then flying home, but met Sasha in person, just an amazing man. And so, if you're looking for any more information, I'm sure a lot of you know who Sasha is already, but there's a place to go. And then one other source is what is called the First Republic Registrar Foundation out of the UK. And man, some wonderful information on their site about sovereignty. I've wrote a blog or two on there myself, and not that my information's all that wonderful, but I like to write too. And the other writers and the speakers and videos that are on that site are just phenomenal. You'll see ICJ and ICC, which is the United Nations symbols for International Court of Justice and whatnot. But don't let that stop you, is what I'm going to say. Like, dive into it and find the good in everything. So I think I'll leave it at that, Chris, if that's okay. Or I'd love to hear a few more things from you to finish it off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that really. What I'm going to say is, what I wanted to with is, you always have a great saying at the end, and I'll let you say that. But before that, I'll just say a few words. Is what we said in the last talk that got interrupted and so on. Lots of communication problems on my end. Basically, was that all the world systems are ending, and I think that was a good point to end on. Is to talk a little bit about that, and then give your classic ending, and I love that one.
Sure. Yeah, it's the end of the world as we know it. And when you think of the world, it is a system. It's not Mother Earth. Mother Earth is what we are as spiritual and animal beings. We are the land. We are the earth. We are the heart. And the idea that the world is coming to an end, good, because it's the World Bank, the World Trade Center, the World Judicial Court System. Anything that has the word world in it just is a red flag right off the bat to tell you that is a system that we got caught in. And call it the Matrix, whatever you want to call it, but it's the world, and that is coming to an end. So thank God. So I'll leave it with my little thing that I do: peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day. I love you guys, and thank you so much, Chris. I love you too, brother.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much. You have a wonderful evening. Cheers. Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.